Alright guys, today we are going to be working on the X308 XJR. It's a year 2000 model. We are doing a cooling system service. Most notably, it has one of the common coolant line leaks, and it's one of the less fun ones, which is the one that runs under the intake manifold. It's a common problem for this generation of Jag, so you know, a lot of people do run into this. So we're going to be showing you how to get through it, and as always, showing you that it's actually a lot more straightforward than it seems. So I already got a small head start on this. I was actually waiting for James to show up here with the camera equipment, so I just did some of the basics, which I'll walk you through right now. Just the easy stuff, which I'm sure you guys could figure out. But that being said, I pulled off the 3 plastic covers here. You just have a couple of little bolts that go in on either side there. You're able to lift these up and out. That frees up the back there. I disconnected the intake tube and air box. So there's one little nut right here on the bottom of the air box. The air box has 3 clips that you would pop, and then one on the inner side here as well. That frees up the top. This plug for the mass airflow. And then at the back, you have a bolt here and a bolt here that you will undo. And that frees up the rear of the intake tube as well. There's also this, which I believe is for like an oil vent tube into the intake. And then that should all come out. The bottom of the airbox does also go into these rubber plugs here. So you'll have to kind of give it some oomph as you lift up. And then the little snout comes through the fender here. And you'll kind of have to just wiggle that out. And that comes out pretty straightforward. So after I got that off, I then moved on to removing the fans. There are 2 plugs on the fans. The clips are actually designed in a pretty friendly way, because it's almost like they know that you're going to be reaching down into this tight space. Let me show you one of these. So these are the plugs. They are plugged into the bottom of the fans. This clip actually pushes outward. You see what I'm doing with my thumb there? So actually, you can reach down and simply press on that clip with your fingers just to get it away a little, and then push down and just kind of gently wiggle, and it'll come free. You have to do both of them. Mine also had a zip tie holding the wire to the shroud, just to keep the wire away from the belts here. So snip that. You then have 2 bolts, one right here and one right here, that come out real easy. And once you remove those, the fan assembly is free. You literally just kind of gently work it up. Watch out for these little lines up here. Just make sure you don't get caught on those and put too much force on them. I just lifted mine up and out over the passenger side here, and that was that for the fan removal. The last thing I did was I have taken off the belt for the supercharger, because this whole thing is going to be coming off. Again, I know it seems super daunting, but just remember, it's a car. It's just a bunch of clips and bolts and hoses and stuff like that. It'll come apart, it'll go back together. Just, you know, slow and steady. Keep track of which bolts go where. If you don't already know this method, a Ziploc bag with notes is your friend. And even if you end up with 100 of them at the end, you'll know which bolts go where every single time. That's how I built the entire atomic bell. And I didn't lose a single thing. So anyway, the supercharger belt is super straightforward here. This is something I also actually, I believe, was on my Crown Vic as well, which was a really friendly design. This is the tensioner pulley, and you'll see this square fitting where my finger is here. You can actually put the square of a 1/2-inch drive ratchet into that, and then you can use the ratchet and just push, and it'll take the tension off the belt. And then with your other hand, you can basically slide the belt off and over, and then release the tension, and then get it off over the main drive pulley here that's on the crank. And the nice thing is this actually has 2 separate belts, one just for the supercharger. So I'm just doing that belt. I'm going to leave the other one in place. It is still looped over the tensioner. I don't have enough room to get it in between the 2 here. I think it should be okay to stay there, but I'll let you know later in the video if that changes. So I'm now going to move on to some of the next steps, which is the super fun part of draining the coolant. and we will get that going. All right, I've just started draining the coolant. The reading I did online was a little on the vague side, but down on the driver's side at the bottom rear of the radiator, I don't know if you can see where my finger is here, is this little drain plug right here. Made of plastic, has this little tab on it. So basically I've just loosened it, but have not taken it the whole way out. I am guessing it's going to spray quite aggressively once I pull it the whole way out. That said, I've made sure to, hey, these have actually slipped, pull up my wiring harnesses and everything like that, try and keep them out of the way of the splash zone, and then the belt as well. No point getting a bunch of coolant on that and then having to clean it. So I'm going to free this bad boy up and make a bit of a mess here, and then proceed to let this drain down. So now that the coolant drain is complete, or at least as complete as the drain plug will get it. Oh, and a small note, if you crack the reservoir here, it'll definitely drain a lot faster. So that helped to really rocket things along. Anyway, if you are working on a relatively complicated vehicle like this and going relatively deep, so you know you're going to be touching 100 different things in here, as you go, just take a bunch of photos. It is something I cannot recommend highly enough. Simple example, the hoses here. Obviously there's a pretty complicated path of how these run, the connectors, everything like that. When you're dealing with just a lot of stuff, one simple photo can save you a lot of heartache. So I'm going to snap some top-down shots. I'm going to snap from different angles here before I start taking all of this apart. And when it goes back together, when I have the inevitable, which one does this hose go onto, I can just refer to my photos and feel confident that I am putting it back the right way. Again, the beautiful thing with smartphones is you have that camera right in your pocket, and you have access to those photos whenever you need them. So just a small note, and it'll make your life a lot easier. Okay, so I've removed the grill. The hoses I'm replacing will also include the intercooler ones, and it helps to reach these hose clamps on either side here. The grill's pretty easy. You just have 2 Phillips head screws inside of each of the mesh screens. If you have the XJR, you'll have the mesh grill. Honestly, if you don't have the XJR, your coolant hoses are going to be completely different to this anyway. Once you've got the grills out, undo the top, they swing forward and just lift out. And then you have 4 T30 Torx bolts that hold the actual grill surrounded. So I've just popped that out real quick and easy. And I'll now be removing these hose clamps here, or at least scooting them off of their mount points so that I can free these up. And these correspond with these lines right here in the engine bay, which is part of this whole mess up here. And then there's a similar one down there, which also runs to the intercooler auxiliary cooling pump. Which on mine I'm actually going to be upgrading to the Bosch unit that a lot of people do from the different AMG Mercedes for a higher coolant flow as future-proofing, as I do plan on eventually pulleying and putting an intake on this car to bump the power some. So for now, while I'm in here, I'm at least going to upgrade that pump while I'm replacing all these hoses. All right, so just removed the what I will refer to as the thermostat housing and coolant crossover. This piece sits across the nose of the supercharger here and bolts to the engine in 2 locations with 2 8mm bolts each. You will need a little extension to remove those. This large hose here, which on mine is badly bulged, you'll need to remove the clip from there. And then this little guy under here also has a clip on him. That was probably the most fiddly part, just getting down in the middle here and getting that clip slid back. But once you get that done, pretty much this guy just comes right out. And that is necessary because, again, we are pulling the whole supercharger out. So while you're in there, you want to inspect the O-rings. I'm going to check these once I clean them and see. They look like they could be serviceable, but if they're not, I'll just get some replacements. But the thermostat does appear to be in decent shape, so that's at least good. So we're going to keep on cracking, and we will keep disassembling. right, so we're making some good progress. We have most of the hoses and everything out. In fact, I think all of the relevant hoses out, except for the ones that go under the intake manifold. So we are now working on removing the supercharger itself, as I'll be changing the oil on that while that's out. As you can tell, this is a pretty deep service, but again, the goal is to get this thing super stout and not have to worry about anything, because I do plan on increasing the power. Obviously, it's always smart to just future-proof anything you're working on. So what we've done so far, like I said, we've removed the hoses that were all over the place here. We freed up this harness as well, so that it can come up and over when we move the supercharger out. We actually plan on pulling the supercharger out forward and leaving these intercoolers in place at first. We've removed the throttle body here, and as you can see, the previous owner, it appears, definitely did some funny business here with some silicone and stuff like that, so we'll be putting that back to right. But hey, that's something we'll deal with when we get to it. Basically, with the blower, we've removed the two front bolts here, which are 10 mil and as you might predict, have a pretty high torque spec, which we'll give you when we're putting it all back together. And at the back, we are now separating where the throttle body and the intercoolers all combine. They are bolted to the back of the blower in here with 4 10 mil bolts, and that's what we're working on right now. Giving you a little more detail about what we've removed so far. From the coolant reservoir here, there is a connector here, which leads to 2 of these sort of harder plastic style lines. They run along the back here, up under this intake manifold, or sorry, the intercooler. They come forward here, and then they connect to the radiator here, and then they connect to this line, which runs around to the front through here. I believe it either connects to the radiator or intercooler. Disconnect those and slide them back out towards the back here to get them out of the way. We also removed the 90-degree elbow here because that needed to get out of the way as well. All right, guys, so moving on to the next phase of disassembly here, just to get a little bit deeper. I got some new intake gaskets to go underneath the intercoolers here. These bad boys, and you know, I may be using the wrong term, but part of the intercooler assembly. I mean, I think actually the intercooler might be up front, or the heat exchanger, I don't know, one way or the other. So we will be removing both of these. So basically, from what I can see, it looks like it's just these T30 Torx bolts here. They seem to be of a relatively low torque spec, so if you got one of these handy power ratchets, should be real easy. The only thing, there's a couple little tight ones back here, which I think is the perfect opportunity to use my little gadget, which you've seen me use before, my little 1/4-inch ratcheting ring spanner with a Torx bit in it, and it should let you get nice and tight in there, and you still have a ratcheting device to get it out quickly. So I am going to loosen these up here and get these removed, and we will check back in once they're off, and we'll go from there. All right, so I have the Torx bolts removed from the intercooler heat exchanger thingies. As you probably saw, there we go, in that time lapse. If you don't have one of these, I would highly suggest getting one. If you work on cars frequently, genuinely, it saves so much time. The amount of time you sit there just cranking on a ratchet, especially when it's a bolt that doesn't just, you know, become finger tight after breaking it free. This thing just saves you so much fatigue and everything. This one is a Milwaukee brand. I've also had experience with like a little rechargeable one made by Husky. It's pretty good, and I think that one was only like 50 bucks. So worth taking a look. But again, if you work on cars all the time, seriously, these things save a lot of labor. So, you know, I'm a convert. I used to do everything by hand whenever I could, and just little things like this seem to make it a little easier. So that being said, next up, now that those bolts are freed up, down the back of the engine here, the harness snaps into them here. I probably should have popped these out. Oh, actually, one already is, but pop that guy. Oh, well, never mind. Guess that clip's in need of reattachment. So the harness is free. We also have this little plug right here in the passenger side, on this one here at least. So I need to undo that plug. And then the last thing is these hoses are obviously clamped on here. I'm going to free up these clamps just so that I can basically pull straight up and get these bad boys off. As you can see on mine, and this is the main reason I am doing this, there's kind of been like a bodge here. I'm guessing that there was some sort of leak. I would assume a boost leak of some sort, and the previous owners wrapped some plastic around here, or some rubber, sorry, and had thrown an extra hose clamp on this. So we're gonna discover what the heck's going on there. I'm hoping it was just perhaps this this rubber piece is split. I'm really hoping it's not the aluminum piece here, but we will get in there and see what we can find. All right, so this clip is actually extremely easy to work with. Let's see if I can get you guys an angle in here. There we go. There's this little metal clip, which you can literally just lift off with your thumb. Just careful not to drop it, that little guy. Convenient Jag tray here. Even if you don't have the toolkit, you can put your own tools here while you're working on it. Gotta love it. All right, and once that little clip is off, literally just wiggles right off, no issue. So that was real easy to remove. And now I'm gonna go fight with these hose clamps. Probably don't need to show you that, but I will show you the tool I use, which is this style of pliers, where you have the option of either having them have that pivot point where they close like normal pliers, or the wider pivot point here. I use the wider one, and it gives you the reach that you need to really get on these tabs and really squeeze it, but you still have leverage. So I made that super easy, and there is a lot of these clamps, so if you have this style of plier, it's gonna make your life a lot easier. Anyway, I'm gonna get to this and hopefully pop one of these bad boys off. Well, that was actually extremely easy. All I ended up doing was lifting straight up with the direction kind of away from the hose. My thought was, even if I needed to, I would be able to rotate this a little bit to wiggle it free. Honestly, it just took a little bit of a boop, and it popped right out. The gasket came free with the other piece, so I'll just end up cleaning up this little surface here. I do have new gaskets to go on and replace that. I believe I got a lot of the hoses, gaskets, etc. from Rock Auto. I will list out the specific parts. I'll try and even link to them if I can, that I used for my exact car. Just bear in mind, earlier ones, there are potentially different part numbers for them. I'm not sure what the actual variances are, but a lot of the parts I found, basically they're good up until X VIN number, you know what I mean, up until VIN number blah 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 blah. So I made sure that I got the right ones for mine. I'll even see if I can post the listing that I found that kind of gives all that information. A gentleman online did a lot of homework and did an excellent job of describing which parts go for which car. So see if I can share that with you. That way I'm giving credit to the guy that did the legwork there as well. So one other fair warning, which I kind of knew was going to happen when I took it off. There is still going to be coolant in these, so just careful. I did get a little drip up on the fender there, which I need to clean up right now. But when you pick it up, just be aware that coolant will come pouring out of these pipes. So anyway, I'm going to work on removing this other one and dab up that coolant, and we'll check back as soon as this one is off. So because I'm a glutton for punishment, I bought a myriad of hoses to replace, figuring while I'm in there, I am going to replace everything I could possibly reach. Some of them actually are out of the vicinity that we're inherently working them with the pulling the blower. But that being said, since I bought them, I am going to try and replace them. They are buried down the back of the engine bay here. So we have this little crossover guy here, which actually, after comparing to the hose I bought, I think this is just a regular piece of hose that maybe the previous owner bought and put in there, where the other one I have is properly formed. This guy that comes from the reservoir and then proceeds to snake off in a million directions is also getting replaced, which is probably going to be the most fun. One of the connections is here, one is over there. It goes across the top of the transmission way down there. You might be able to see that. It's the one with this little heat shroud on it there. So I'm gonna have to take that off. And then also this guy right here as well, I'm gonna be replacing. So because of that, I'm actually gonna be removing this coolant reservoir, which has one of these fittings. Now I mentioned taking these off to you earlier, but I figured I would just show you, since, you know, describing it may not do it justice. So let's see if I can get you set up here. If I can get my tripod to grip on here. There we go. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Because they are plastic, you want to be delicate, but you're squeezing this little ridged piece here. There's one on the bottom as well. So what I've been doing is squeezing and then gently getting a screwdriver, like a flat blade, in there and just giving it an ever so gentle twist and trying not to mar the plastic too much. You know, you get a little one if you go a little rough, but it does a pretty good job of separating it without really damaging like the O-ring or anything like that. So just wanted to show you that. In the meantime, I'm going to be removing the reservoir, which is a bolt here, or sorry, a nut here and a nut here underneath. They look to be 10 mil. In fact, let me check. They are in fact 10 mil. So I'm going to get this taken off and see what other surprises await. Actually, also, there is this plug here that you're going to need to disconnect. Similar to that other one, it has the metal clip on it. And then also you have the hose down here, which is one of those clamps I showed you. So I'm going to take all of that off and hopefully have this reservoir out next time you see me. All right, so the reservoir is out. It was just what I pointed out. The two nuts, the plug and the hose, and then the bottom hose is here as well. That being said, if you are having issues with your reservoir level sensor, this is the time to replace it. Not taking mine out because it's good, but it does appear that it just clips in, just to give you an idea there. So I would guess you can probably just gently pry that out. However, you may want to do a little research and confirm that, since I am not doing it. So I got a little deeper. I have disconnected this second piece of the same spaghetti mess hose that I'm going to be replacing. Predictably, each hose I disconnect, there's more coolant, so just be prepared that it's going to make a bit of a mess. My intent is to honestly do a thorough cleaning of the engine bay anyway. Another thing I did down here is one of the other coolant pumps, which I believe is for the heating system. I disconnected the hose which goes, let's see if I can show you here, underneath there, and it comes under here and down to that guy. And then we've got this little zigzaggy guy here as well that I'll be replacing too. I really picked some winners to replace. Makes me second guess. They weren't leaking, and I'm like, you should have done the if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But here we are. So my priority though is to continue getting further back to expose this guy, the giant hose here, because that will probably be the biggest pain in the butt, and I'm a firm believer in tackling the most daunting ones first. So I will do that and just continue to chip away as I go. And once that goes in, I think pretty much we're back onto the kind of cleaning and reassembly phase. So fingers crossed that it all goes smooth. We'll see. All right, start of another day. I lost the light a little bit yesterday thanks to this time of year, it getting dark so early, and not having a garage. Obviously, I am working in my front yard. So that being said, I did start chipping away this morning. I've removed a couple of additional hoses here. So the two, one of which was actually my main problem, that run through the valley here. You can see this metal elbow pipe here that my finger's touching. The little bright spot there is where the hose came off. This makes a little dog leg and comes back to this complicated connector here, which I'm still figuring out. As soon as I figure out how to disconnect that, I will then be able to pull out the whole Octopus hose back there that I signed myself up to replace. That being said, you also have the zigzag hose here, which comes back, oh, and let me show you. Okay, it connects to this little guy. So basically, this sits in situ just underneath this pipe that's covered in the tinfoil looking stuff here, like the heat shroud, right about where I've got it there. This little hose that my finger is on here is connected to the long barb on top, and the Octopus hose is connected to this. So basically, and then there's a regular spring clip on this fitting here. I ended up disconnecting the small hose and the Octopus hose off of it, and then actually pulling this whole piece out with the zigzag hose here, and then pulling this out of the hose separately. So that being said, on the Octopus hose, you've got this connector here, which is relatively straightforward to work with. These two clips that you see on either side, I actually just put flat blade screwdrivers underneath each side of that, rotated them outward to lift the clip up, and then pulled back, and it came out relatively easily. So that's about where I've gotten to so far. Oh, and I removed the two connectors that go between the heat exchangers and the plenum what's-it here. And actually, in that process, confirmed one of the things that I had noticed a little bit ago, which is the blue goop. My car definitely had a bit of an issue with that hose, as you can see. So I'll be replacing both of these because I'm guessing that would equate to a boost leak. So that being said, more chipping away to do. Of note as well, while you're in here, if you are in here and you've gone this far, replace your knock sensors. They're really not that expensive. I want to say mine were about 23 bucks each. Not easy to access, so now is the time. So I got new knock sensors that I'll be putting in, and that is one less thing to worry about while we're in here. So I'm going to be working now on the last connector of the Octopus hose, and I believe I also have the replacement for this little guy as well. And also, I have this zigzag shaped little heater hose back here that I need to replace as well, or not need to, but bought the replacement for. So I'm actually removing this pump, which is just these two nuts here, also 10 mil, but it has 4 connections. So you've got the 2 on this side and the 2 on that side. I've actually freed up the pump. I've already taken the clips off here, so I just need to disconnect these 3 hoses and pull that out, and then that'll let me get to this guy back here and also make a little more clearance to work on the Octopus hose at the back. So sorry for the long-winded catch-up. I'm going to keep chipping away here, and I will update you on the next step. Julie, you a YouTuber? Oh, hi. Oh, you a celebrity?
Just linked it, by the way.
Yep. All right, we have some progress. So the clip really is just as simple as this outer collar here. Let me see if I can get it to show on camera. Has this little tab on it. When you press that tab, you're able to slide the collar back towards the hose, like so. Once that's back, it lets these tabs slip up and over the ridge on this metal pipe right here. Just a little bit of wiggling and pull, and it should just pop right off. So actually a little more straightforward than I thought, which is lovely. So I just have the last connections over here on that pump that I'm going to be pulling, and that should be the entire Octopus hose ready to come out. I did notice, oh yeah, there's one more thing. This pump does have a 3rd nut lower down. Just be aware. I was like, doesn't seem like it's coming loose. And lo and behold, there's one on the side right down in here. So just if you are removing it like I am, you do need to take that off as well. So I'm going to get that taken care of, remove those hoses, and check in with you here momentarily. So I successfully removed the pump, relatively straightforward. That let me disconnect these 2 hoses here pretty easily. I just was able to get a little flat blade on there, gently pry away as I pulled the pump this way, and it just slid off nice and easy with very little pressure. So this is the last part of the Octopus hose, which I now need to figure out how to thread out of the space over the bell housing there. And then this is the little zigzaggy heater hose as well, both of which will be being replaced. So I'm going to work on carefully removing both of those, and then this little guy here, and that I think is all of the crazy hoses that I bought. So I'm gonna probably chip away at that, I think, and get it to where it's ready to just have new hoses go in. And I think at that point I am on to cleaning. All right, the Octopus hose is out. So for reference, this crossover part here sits basically on top of the bell housing. These both point forward. This comes up on the driver's side, this comes up on the passenger side. This is that complicated clip that's actually easier than it looks. This is the clip that I use the 2 flat blade screwdrivers on to tease up the prongs and pop back. It does have an O-ring in there. This connector right here that points straight up goes into the bottom of the coolant reservoir. This little 90 here goes into one side of the pump that's mounted on the driver's side, kind of near the rear of the fender. And then this goes into the other end of the same pump. So I did take photographs of the pump to make sure that I connect them back up properly. But yeah, that was it. I ended up poking everything down, lower down onto on the driver's side, and then pulling it up out the passenger side. There was a little more room on that end. So fingers crossed I can feed the other one back in the same way. But hopefully that gives you a frame of reference of how this hose is connected. So I am now on to the last heater hose that's still back in there, and once that's out, I am on to cleaning. So I'm going to remove that bad boy and start wrapping my head around what to clean first and how to clean it.